Hello everyone. In today's video, I thought I'd take a few minutes to discuss the considerations when you're buying a Payware airplane. Now, it's worth saying at this point that many people never buy a single Payware aircraft at any time. They simply stick with the aircraft that are already available for free, or they do the ones that are already built into the simulator, and that is fantastic. But many of you often say, hey, I noticed there's a big sale going on. How do you pick out an airplane, or which plane should I get, or anything along those lines? So what I wanted to do today is just take a couple minutes to discuss some of the considerations I make, as well as some of the considerations you should consider as well. Considering considerations, if you will. And we'll kind of go through that as you want. The first things first, and this one's at the tippy top of my list, is this plane that you're interested in purchasing something you already have? I know that sounds like, oh, well, why would you buy something that you already have? Well, it's interesting enough, but believe it or not, and a lot of times there are actually add-ons. It will be the same add-on for something you already possess, or it is something extremely similar to something you already possess. Now, one of the reasons I say that is if you just take a look again, I'm just going to go to the piston real quickly, and this again is as of relative to this. Do you notice anything about a lot of the planes that you see here? Now, obviously, we've got a couple of different ones, and I just take a general look about the form factor of the airplanes that you're looking at, and you're probably going to start noticing a couple different trends with it. How many different variations of a single engine plane with a Lycoming 360 do you need in order to be satisfied? Obviously, it's completely up to you. It is your enjoyment. It is exactly what you want. Now, taking a look through here, we've got some aircraft that have 3 engines. We have aircraft with 2 engines. We have aircraft that are very small airplanes. We have aircraft that are classic warbirds in here. We have, some aircraft that are all sorts of different styles. And you want to be thinking about it, how is the next aircraft that I'm going to purchase, or the one I'm interested in purchasing, either going to complement or potentially replace, or is it going to be something like, well, I've already got a big, this or that. Why would I need 6 more of them, or something along those lines? It's really worthwhile considering that, because a lot of times I make the mistake of buying the next greatest thing just to have the complete collection, so to speak, without realizing, I've already got a plane that can do 6,000 miles, or I've already got an airplane that, can take off and land in 50 feet, or I've already got an airplane that has X, Y, Z in it. It's really important you're saying, what am I getting different in addition with this particular airplane that I didn't have with other airplanes? The next thing we're going to take a look at is, will the actual thing you're interested in flying work on your computer? Now, you're sitting there going, well, everybody knows that. It's going to work perfectly fine. You're going to load it up and kind of be on your way, kind of a thing like that. Well, it's worthwhile to double check that your system requirements match the recommended system requirements for whatever particular thing that you're interested in using. A lot of times what happens is you have these different add-ons that are absolutely incredible and everything along those lines, but you're going to run into situations where the particular performance of those add-ons are not going to be as amazing as you hoped it was. For example, consider, again, I'm just picking these completely at random, the avionic complexity of a T6, and then compare that with the avionic complexity of a DC6. And imagine, what are the different system requirements going to be between the two, and how is that going to impact, perhaps you like to fly in VR? Is it something that you're in a situation where you like to fly completely normal and flat screen? Maybe you're on a laptop. Maybe any of those things can affect you and actually have a big impact on what you're able to do and what kind of performance you're going to get. Keep in mind, as the complexity of an aircraft goes up and as the level of avionics inside of it starts to slowly increase as well, you're going to be running into reduced performance no matter what you do. If I just pick this random grasshopper, just as a quick little example here, let's see if we can find ourselves a cockpit view. Scrolling down. Again, this is just rules of thumb here. They don't give us a cockpit view. That would be one of the things I'd be a little nervous about, but again, there we go. Like this one right here, chances are you've got no digital displays. You've got no advanced avionics. You have nothing. So it's just basically a few instruments. And you can already see that the aircraft itself, you don't have a lot of reflections on the windows. You don't have multiple engines you're doing calculations for. There's nothing like that. There's a very good chance that this particular aircraft, just taking a peek at these requirements here, is probably going to run better than something that is significantly more complicated. The next thing I want to talk about is the aircraft itself that you're interested in getting going to be something that you're going to fly more often than what you already have in your current collection? Now, that sounds pretty obvious, but it's one of those situations where, just going again through all these excellent, fantastic fighter jets, which are so much fun to play with, you're looking through these going, oh, do I want one of these? Do I want one of these? Do I want 4 of them? Do I want all 6 of them? Do I want to get all of them? Keep in mind, is it going to be a situation where, oh, I'm going to get this plane. Oh, but it doesn't have autopilot. I don't want to fly it anymore. Or, oh, this is a really good plane, but it can only get to the end of the runway, and I like to fly 4 or 5 hour missions. It's all things you want to be thinking about when you're approaching one of these purchases. What you don't want to do is get this great plane plane that only operates out of a place you never fly. So what's the point? Obviously, you can fly it because you enjoy it or something along those lines. But just remember, is it going to match what you already do? Again, that's kind of a thing like that. The next thing to think about is cost versus quality. Now, this is one of those values that everybody has a different idea of what gives something value. But just poking on the marketplace real quickly, I can actually come in here and set price low to high real fast. And they have some aircraft that are free. This one's very, very unique, by the way, if you haven't checked that out already. And you have some very, very, very cost-effective aircraft. We have this amphibious ultralight for $6. And, we've got an Edge of the Optica for $8. Now, when you grab onto this stick and you go all the way to the bottom, you'll notice that it changes a little bit. All of a sudden we'd run into situations where I'm actually going to go ahead and hide things I don't own because you don't need to see that, although you got a pretty good look a second ago. Now we have aircraft that are $65. So we have aircraft that are $45. We have single engine propeller airplanes that are $50. We have, regional jets that are $51 typically. We have twin props that are $40. There's a massive range of prices here, and there's also a massive range of quality on both ends of this. Now, I'm not going to make any judgments one way or the other. You have to decide what value means to you. It's just really, really important that you take a minute to look at the price of something, think about the review quality of it, and then think about probably where am I going to use it. Is this particular aircraft that's all the way on this end, the complete Reno Air Races, is all these different airplanes completely worth it to me for that price? Potentially $400, by the way. Look at that. That's terrifying. Or does it not make sense? On the flip side, if we swing down to this way, you can have a lot of fun with the little sorting capabilities. Let's say I want to only see 4+. So now all of a sudden you get an interesting scenario where our aircraft that are cheap also happen to have a pretty good rating. Now, if you flip it the other way, notice what happens here. Now, just because something's more expensive, did its rating match it? Do you have anything that's very expensive that has a low rating? There's probably a reason for that, and you want to find out why before you make one of these purchases, because it can leave you with a little bit of buyer's regret, especially when you can't return most of what you see here. Next one, and this is a quick one, is the item that you're interested in actually an expansion or is it a full airplane? One of the mistakes that I've made in the past is if you go down here to libraries, every single thing you see here, none of these are airplanes. Every single one of them is actually an add-on graphics to it, which, they're absolutely beautiful and awesome and wonderful. But just keep in mind that this isn't an airplane. Look at this gorgeous A320. We've already got the A320, so we don't have to worry about it. But this MiG-29, for example, $6 for MiG-29? All right. Keep in mind, this is just the appearance of the MiG-29. This isn't the actual MiG-29. So make sure you're watching out for things like expansion packs that require the default aircraft in order to go ahead and do something along those lines. The next thing, do you have the appropriate controllers for it? Now, I just went on Google Images real fast and literally typed in HOTAS, and it came out with tons of different images of different HOTASs, as well as some more simple basic joysticks here. Do you need a HOTAS to control an airplane? Do you need a single stick? Do you need something fancy? Do you require, rudder pedals, for example? If you're operating helicopters and you don't have rudder pedals, you're going to have a heck of a time controlling that particular aircraft. Does the thing I'm interested in here, is it going to require something special? Maybe I need a special kind of radio. Maybe I need a special third-party add-on in order to make it work. Those are all going to be things you want to think about before you run off and purchase certain types of aircraft. The next thing we want to think about is how detailed a particular aircraft is. Now, this can be sometimes difficult to determine looking at a picture. If I, for example, again, I'm not picking on anybody in particular here. I'm just going to grab something at random. Ooh, that looks interesting. If I click on this particular aircraft, I can get a general idea of what the graphics on the inside look like. I can take a look at it from the outside. Okay, well, it looks like we have a good amount of instrumentation. We have, some graphics down here. It looks like some of the old school photorealistic stuff, some different handles and gauges and buttons. We've got, of course, a nice little picture. It looks excellent up front. We can read through all the details on other websites as well, when you're poking around something along those lines, like we have the 737 for PMDG, which, again, I don't need to introduce it. I'm sure you probably heard about it. But reading through its description, you can see how fantastically detailed this particular aircraft is. Now, one of the reasons I put this on my list here is you want to be thinking about that when you buy something. Do I want to buy something that's fantastically complicated? Do I want to buy something that's fantastically simple? Do I want something that's, I'm going to take 25 minutes to get started before I can go anywhere? Again, this is an amazing aircraft, but look at the engineer panel on my right. One of the things are people will panic and they'll scroll down here and realize, oh, there's a thing that automates most of that for you. Fantastic. But just think about it this way. I want a plane that goes fast. Do you need this, or do you need something like, let's pick an F-14, for example, or is this going to work a little bit better for you? Which one's going to be more complicated? Are you going to see yourself flying one more or less than the other because of the fact that you took the time to learn it, or are you going to have to watch 500 YouTube videos just to figure out how to get the thing started without the engine cutting out on you? These are all things you want to think about before you purchase an aircraft. And as aircraft get expensive, they tend to get more complicated. It's just sort of a general rule. It's not always the case, but keep that in mind that you're going to run into a situation where you have a really, really expensive plane that's going to take a really big time commitment on your part in order to figure out how to operate it. And even then, maybe you just don't have the time to operate it as often as you want to actually fly it. The next thing I want to talk about is about reviews. Now, one of the big things about reviews, and this is something you want to be thinking about, is it's not just the quality of the review. The other thing you're going to be interested in with any review is you're also going to be very, very interested in seeing specifically that review, what they're saying, and how many reviews there are. For example, again, I'm grabbing everything completely at random here. We have this lovely CL415 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. It has a total of 2 reviews. So we know that 2 people read it. They're talking about it's a great airplane. We have a 5-star. We have a 3 that talks about all these different components. And it's sort of interesting, like they say, that if you read these 2 reviews, they basically say the same thing, but they have a 2-point difference. As a general rule, you get the law of averages. The more people that review something, the more reliable the rating of the review will become. So if you just take a look again today, we'll go pop onto jets, because why not? We'll disable piston for now. Like I said, keep it simple. For example, we have this one that has 23 views. That's not a lot of reviews, whereas the F-14 has 1.4 thousand reviews. So one of the things you want to be looking at for is how many reviews does something have and what is the number on the review. If the amount of reviews is a big number and the average on the review is very high, you can guarantee yourself that you probably have something that a lot of people like. Also, when you poke around online, people love making video reviews of things. Cough, I wouldn't know anything about that. But when you do those video reviews, look at everything. Look at how well does it run. Take a look at, does it run smoothly? Are we in a situation where there's a lot of steps? Does it seem like the controls are not quite what they want to be used for in those particular cases? You want to be looking at that when you're looking at those particular points. And it's really, really critical that when you do look at reviews, read them, because a lot of times people will be like, it looks like this, it looks like this, it looks like this. Oh, and it's fun to fly. I'm sure you've seen fun to fly in almost every single review you ever did. Remember, people are motivated to do the reviews for some reason. Either they hate the plane or they think it's the greatest thing ever. So when you're watching and you're reading these things, make sure you're listening for a little bit of that bias there. Oh, well, I put this plane at the top of my list, cough, because I love the plane. It's just so cool. How's it model? Oh, it's crap, but I love it anyway. It's just something you want to be thinking about as you're watching and reading these things and taking a look at these numbers. Somebody actually had a really, really good chart. I don't have it. I'm not going to call it up right this second, but they were describing exactly how the average person reviews something. And it was so funny because the amount of time spent on the review was directly proportional to how extreme the review was. And I just thought that was a very, very interesting kind of how that played out. So it's one of those kind of things. All right, now for the last item on my little checklist here. And like I said, we're just keeping it basic today because a couple people were asking about this. Are you purchasing the aircraft that you want from a reputable source? Now, I picked 4 random websites basically here for the purposes of this. And the reason I did that is it was the things that came off the top of my head here. Again, nobody's paying me to do this. I'm just showing it to you so that you can get an idea how I approach these things. Different websites are going to have different sources to get things. A lot of planes like SimMarket and our good friends over here at Aerosoft, what they'll do is they'll give you a file, you download the file, and you drag it into your community folder. If you are on the marketplace over here in Microsoft, installing is super simple. You simply pick the plane you want, click buy and download. It walks you through the process in Steam. You press go, and 15 minutes later, next thing you know, if you go poke over to your little place here where you've got all your different good stuff, you will now see that inside your profile, you now got your entire hangar, and it's got tons and tons and tons of stuff. Ignore the 200 hours, by the way. That 200 hours is only when you don't crash. And trust me, I crash a few planes. So it's worthwhile, and now it comes into your content manager, and then you can go back and forth, and you can activate different stuff. You can do different mods and all those kind of items as well. So hopefully this guide was helpful in making you consider things with Payware. At the end of the day, you're going to buy what you're going to buy, but you can reduce the chance of being frustrated by watching some videos, reading a couple of reviews, seeing how many reviews there are, making sure you get things from reputable sources, and make sure you buy an airplane or buy whatever you choose. Again, there's a ton of really, really cool stuff here. Make sure you buy something that you're actually interested in. I'd hate to see a situation where you buy this one plane, it's going to be great, but you don't have rudder pedals, and it's not going to work at all for you because of that. Or, you buy this plane and the performance is atrocious because, it's relatively early access or something along those lines. Again, you want to be thinking about these things. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad experience, and you're going to be less likely to do it again in the future. But other than that, enjoy.